morning, everyone. Welcome. Good morning. Thank you. All right, so we are going to start our open forum presentation with Dr. Brock Fisher. He is currently the Associate Vice President of Arts and Sciences at McHenry County College in Crystal Lake, Illinois. He's held that position since 2016. And prior to that at the institution, he was also the Executive Dean of Humanities and Social Sciences. Prior to his time at McHenry, he was the Chair of Fine Arts at Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And he did that role for 3 years. His PhD is in theater from the University of Missouri-Columbia. I will welcome Dr. Fisher, and we'll let him start with a presentation, and then we will open the forum up for questions.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me out today, and thank you so much for being here. I know basically break has started, so this is a major sacrifice. I wasn't sure how big of an audience I would have today, so it's great that there are some people here, and it's a pleasure to meet you all. I went back and forth quite a bit on what I was going to talk about this morning. For a while, and they saw I had 2 presentations on my USB, but for a while I was going to do kind of an overview, the future of community colleges, and I suspected that you might get that, and so I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to dig into something really specific and talk about something that I did and an experience that I had that I do think represents one part of the future of community colleges. So today I'm going to be talking about strategic enrollment management planning. And I'll go forward a slide here. This gives you some quotes, really to say that strategic enrollment management planning, or a SEM plan, as we end up calling it, because we love acronyms in higher education. You all know this. So we call it a SEM plan. And it's really, I'm on thin ice to say that this is new, because it was 2007 that we came up with the SEM guidebook. And I've got some quotes here from that guidebook. I don't like to read off of a PowerPoint, so I'll let you all look at those if you can see them. But strategic enrollment management planning, I was put as the co-chair over this at our college just about 2.5 or 3 years ago now. And I will be completely honest in saying that my first initial thought was, great, another plan. Do we really need another plan? We've got a strategic master plan. Shouldn't that do it all? But of course, like most colleges, we have quite a few additional plans. At that time, we had an educational master plan. Of course, we have a facilities plan. And so I wasn't sure, because at that point, I hadn't done a lot of research. I hadn't figured this out. And I was just kind of figuring out. So my immediate thought was skepticism. However, I think when you look at most of the problems facing the contemporary community college, it makes a lot of sense to have a separate, targeted plan to really focus on your strategic enrollment, to create some goals and initiatives for how you're going to generate enrollment. Some of those challenges, a diminishing body of students to pull from. Almost all of us face that. Or, if not that, a changing face, a completely changing face of what our students look like or who we'd like to serve. Almost all of us have a certain target group or demographic on our strategic plan that we want to reach out to. Almost all of us want to figure out how to get more students over 30. I think that was on your last plan. And it's certainly on ours and on almost every community college in America. How do we get more of a certain type of student? So the strategic master plan, the strategic enrollment master plan and strategic enrollment planning starts and reframes us looking at enrollment in a very important way. And that is that everybody's involved. That enrollment is no longer just about student services. It's not about how many students student services brings on campus. Enrollment under this system becomes everybody's issue because it is everybody's issue. When a student walks onto campus, every aspect of that affects whether they're going to stay or not. Every aspect of that affects whether they're going to take one class and be gone, or whether they're going to stick with you and stay the entire time. Do they feel welcome? Are your courses scheduled correctly so that they can take a lot of classes? Do they like the cafeteria experience? Do they like the interactions that they have with student services? So when you start with SEM planning, one of the foundational aspects is that it's everybody's job. That enrollment is everybody's issue. And I liked that. That was one of the first things I read, and that was resonant with me right off the bat, something I got excited about. So an ideal SEM plan focuses on what is best for students and how to ensure their success while addressing all aspects of the institution's mission. That was also very resonant for me. This isn't about numbers necessarily. It isn't about just a kind of number-based system of, oh, we've got to get more students to come here. It's about student success. It's about creating an experience so that students will take more, so they'll stay more, so they'll make your college a part of their lives. So when you set goals and initiatives, it's about student success. A lot of times when you look at a more for-profit model of enrollment, you know, you get, I feel kind of seedy about it, to be honest. It turns students into numbers. SEM planning isn't that. It is about ensuring the students are successful, but in the end, that makes them stay, and that makes them take more classes, and that makes them ultimately come back, because this is a process that extends past, everything from the first time they come on campus to when they leave and to when they become alumni donors. This encompasses all of that. It encompasses absolutely everything. So a successful SIM plan includes the whole college, all employee groups from the most operational to the most strategic level positions. So when complete, a SIM plan should provide the college with a clear set of manageable goals for increasing student, not just enrollment, but also retention and how many classes the students take so that they're taking more classes. So I'm going to give you an example of how this works because, as I said, 2 years ago, I was put as co-chair of this. And we had a co-chair, myself, from the academic side of the house. We had a co-chair from the student services side of the house. And we were told by our brand new president that we needed to create a strategic enrollment plan, that we were going to be doing that. We were also told that we needed to do it very, very quickly. Fortunately, it was summertime. We had the time. We had some spare time in our schedules. So the first thing I did was assemble the group. And since I had read the literature and discovered that everybody was involved, I thought the most important thing was for us to get as many people as possible on the committee. So voices from student services, voices from academic affairs, voices from different service areas in the school, as much as we possibly could. Now, I will be completely honest. At the beginning, we failed in one big area because while we had deans in the room and while we had a lot of administrators in the room, we did not initially have a faculty voice. Part of that is because it was summertime and we were doing things very, very quickly. But in reality, we later learned and corrected that problem and included faculty voicing on this committee as well. So initially, we were moving quick. It included a small team of stakeholders. In a month of intensive work, we were able to gather data for and generate a plan based upon 4 buckets. The buckets we used were pre-entry, onboarding, progression, and completion. Another fundamental component of strategic enrollment management is that it encompasses kind of the lifespan of the student. So if you have a kids in college and they come in 8th grade or in 5th grade to take a summer experience with you, that it begins. They're there, you know what I mean? If they come for a night, we have MCC night, and if they come for a night just to experience maybe what they want to be when they grow up, it begins. That's a part of it. That is a part of your enrollment management plan. So, so we created these buckets, and we created 24 goals at that time for the college to pursue. Now, we later discovered that this was way too many goals. We went to and got our professional development in strategic enrollment management a little bit after we actually created the plan. And so we found out that we had overshot by probably about 19 or 20 goals what we should have. So here's the insane thing. We did it. We did it, and not all of them. I'm not going to say we did all 24. We didn't. But we were able to achieve quite a few of these, and quite a bit more than the 4 or 5 that the experts recommend. So I'm going to give you examples of some of our completed goals that were on the strategic enrollment plan that we created at that time. The first thing, we did a thing called the Higher Education Scheduling Index. This was an odd one because this was a group that had actually come to us at a conference and said, it was kind of a sales pitch, so it made us nervous. How would you like us to make your schedule more efficient so that students could take more classes? So that your classes didn't overlap, so that you didn't have a lot of friction and students could drive up the maximum number of credit hours that they could take and make their lives better. Not just an economic thing, but make their lives better. Because, you know, if they're pursuing a nursing degree, we're going to create a schedule that allows them to take the classes they need to complete their nursing degree on schedule. And we're going to find the places in your schedule where you're doing that wrong, where there's a negative overlap, and we're going to find that for you. And so it was interesting, though, because it cost some money. There was a financial investment, but we believed in them. There was kind of a guarantee that came with it, and they certainly did, without a doubt, live up to it. Basically, the promise was, you will pay us, you know, to do this and gather this research, but you will save this amount of money in the amount of classes that students are able to take and do take. It has been working like gangbusters for us. So that's about scheduling. The next thing that was on was internships and apprenticeships, which is really one that has just gone live this fall, but this is working with our community partners, manufacturing partners, to do a pretty intense system of internships and apprenticeships. You'll hear a lot of talk about this right now. We're using kind of the German model of apprenticeship, where students are actually going to a business and working with them for a set period of time, and kind of, it's almost a trades approach, like becoming a professional tradesperson. So, but that was one of our goals to set up. Early alert reporting, so retention alert. We had it. We had retention alert. So the problem was, we didn't know what to do with it. It worked like gangbusters with the athletes. Why? Because the athletes had coaches, and the coaches could go to them immediately and figure out, you're not attending classes. What's, you know what I mean? So there was that contact person. So for us, the question was, how do we create the contact person? Which leads to another initiative down here, student success coaching. So creating a separate group of advisors that are just pinpoint targeted at some at-risk students. And they're there because they've gotten a lead from retention alert, because they've gotten a lead from one of their high school counselors, some reason or another, but they've got a lead that this student's going to need a little bit of extra assistance, or just their grades, some other thing has brought them to the attention that they need this help. So we also worked on guided pathways, which, once again, that one we're not completely done with, but we're developing some really strong guided pathways for all of our programs. And at this point, we are moving into the final phase. We've created our guided pathways. The departments work together on those. And so we have finalized our guided pathways, and we're getting ready to move to the marketing phase on that. And finally, retooled first-year experience courses. So for us, that's called MCC 101. And we retooled this experience because, like every college on earth, one of the lowest points of satisfaction is our first-year experience courses. And so very low point of satisfaction for us, and so we've retooled it entirely so that is a different experience. So these were all things for us. And you might look at it, and almost none of those fit under how we thought of enrollment in the old days. Almost none of those fit in that. These are all about student success initiatives. They're all about retention initiatives, right? And so definitely you can see how the strategic enrollment management reframes how we look at enrollment and how we think about it. So outcomes and moving forward of this specific examples. So we are currently celebrating the success because we really were able to achieve a lot with the last SEM plan. Over time, one of the things that we corrected even kind of midstream was adding faculty into the process. That was one where we got developed and we went off for more further training, and we really just needed those voices in the room because one of the core messages of SIM is that retention is really where it's at. That enrollment and getting new students is just that first part of the puzzle, but that keeping them, getting them successful enough to take more classes is just important. And you all are smart enough to make the connection that there's no way on earth you can do that without the faculty in the room. They are our retention experts. They are our contact. You know, if we're going to keep students, if we're going to retain them, then we absolutely have to have that faculty voicing. They're mandatory. And further training, we also learned to reduce our active goals, and we've reduced them slightly for the next SIM plan, but we haven't gone down to the 4 or 5 that's recommended. We're still pretty aggressive. So at the close of 2018, we are one of the few, I think really the only, but I don't want to go out on a limb and say that, Illinois community colleges reporting increased enrollments anywhere from 7 to 10%. Most of our colleagues are down about 3 to 5%. So that we really largely attribute to a lot of the successful initiatives that we did through creating a separate plan just focused on strategic enrollment and separate goals that were all tied to that. But not just that, including the appropriate people and including the right voices in the room who were there to make that happen. All right. That's what I have for you today. I came in at right about 18 minutes, 17, 18 minutes. All right, and I'm ready for questions.
Anybody want to kick off the questions?
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Aaliyah Shaw, and I'm the student senate president here on campus. And so you sort of spoke about the scheduling index and the initiative there. And so if that is something we could possibly like implement here, or like other ideas to integrate here on campus, would you be willing to partner with other like communities, people within the community, I would say, to maybe create more initiatives to help the students or help the college?
Absolutely. And so one thing that I would just say is when HESI came in to conduct that research, when they came in, they actually had student voicing. So they had student groups that were also responding. And so you get some of that. And I think you could do something similar to what we achieved with HESI without necessarily employing HESI. I think it's more, at the end of the day, it was more intentional scheduling. Now, I would never want to slight them. If anybody's listening at home, their product is awesome and their services were incredible. But, I mean, it was really intentional scheduling and being extremely mindful, because we were hearing that complaint from students and community members that, well, here I am, I'm trying to be a nurse, but math and chemistry and A and P are all scheduled at the same time. And so we were hearing that. So I do think you really got to open your ears up and listen for that type of feedback, and then make changes where you can. Okay?
Interesting that you spoke about the older students. I'm Bob. I'm one of the students here. And some of the policies that are in place are against the older returning students. For instance, repeating a class. If you've had a C on it 30 years ago and you repeat that class, then you can't get honors and things of that nature. Those are deterrents towards going to the school here. I know that if it wasn't for Dr. Wiggins or Dean Wiggins and a couple of the other instructors or administrators here, that after the next semester I was going to go to Johnson County myself and everything. And I've had to talk to a couple of my friends who were thinking about coming back but knew that they needed to repeat courses when they came back, which puts money in your pocket. But I told them that if they did that, that there was no way they could have graduate with honors based on the policies that are in place now.
So I think one thing that you're always trying to do is remove barriers. And that speaks directly to kind of what you're talking about, and definitely speaks to the SIM process, is trying to find places where you have barriers to success. Some of them you can't change. I mean, and that's one thing. Some of them are state guidelines. And of course, I'm not at this point familiar enough to Kansas to know if that's one of them. But some of them are state guidelines. I always, when I go into a process like that, I look at what can I change. A lot of times we had some barriers that were created by us. You know, quite frankly, they were, and they'd been around so long that you forget to ask yourself, why do we do this anymore? So you'll kind of, you won't you not think to ask that question. But one of the things I think that is a job of the contemporary administrator is to look at those barriers to completion or success or the student experience and really analyze them and see if they're state driven or local driven and they're things that are just out of your power. If so, making sure the students understand that. But if they are something that it would be appropriate to look at and reconsider, then you look at that whenever there are barriers to a student success or student retention. Thanks.
Dr. Fisher, we have a question that was submitted online.
Okay.
Can you define student success?
So I think it's always a tough one. But for me, you want to say that a student comes in with a dream, with a goal, with an ambition, and you make that come true. But what do we all know the reality is, faculty and student service workers? Sometimes they don't come in with the dream or ambition. So I think that student success is different. I think it's personal, and I think that as a school, you absolutely have to set those definitions for yourself. Without a doubt, what's student success? Okay, completion. Let's say, without a doubt, our goal and our ultimate dream is that you've completed and that you move forward towards something and that we've contributed to society in getting you a job and helping you to sustain your family and all of that. So we have, that goal. Of course, the final completion is so important to us, and it has to be important to us, because if we're failing there, that's a problem, right? If we're failing there, that's an issue. But at the same time, we get so many different students from so many different walks of life with so many different experiences that I think as a college, we also have to, what about the person that just wants to make their life better? What about the continuing ed person that just wants to have this experience or take this non-credit dance class? What about somebody who really just needs to pick up a few courses or a few experiences? You really just have a plethora of needs represented. And so while I think that completion is extremely important, of course we've got to think about that completion and moving on to do something successful with your degree. I think we've got to think about those factors while bearing in mind that there's a wide variety of possibilities for success in the community college setting.
Thank you.
doesn't sound like it.
Got it. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Dr. Fisher, with your experience on the strategic enrollment management plans and things that help students be successful, such as engagement activities, in your research of KCKCC, what have you found that helps promote those types of activities for retention, which would lead to a successful SIM plan?
So stuff that's going on here currently that would lead towards that.
Right. Things that we're doing, things that you have found.
So absolutely, I think that everything that I've seen online, I mean, one thing that I love is the Facebook presence. So one thing that I mean has been really interesting to me is right now this is streaming on Facebook. I see a lot of places where you are encouraging students to come in the room for voicing purposes and have a voice in something, and I think that kind of buy-in is absolutely vital. I think that definitely the roots are there with technology, because I think undoubtedly we all know technology is important. One of the other points of what I had talked about was, that I was going to talk about, is how we used to think of technology as a convenience and only look at online classes as a convenience. If we keep doing that and we don't think about using technology for sincere, honest, quick, thorough communications, then we're going to be in trouble, because we have to look at the other valuable things. So I think what I've seen that is positive for me, a lot of different meetings to include voicing where it's possible, which I think is really, really vital, that students and your folks here feel like they have a voice. I think another thing I've seen that I really, really liked is the use of technology, the very active use of Facebook. I've seen some of your presence and you having and maintaining faith in that. That is something that I'm seeing a lot of colleges leverage more to give themselves a personal appeal. And like I said, the fact that this is streaming and it's local and it's very interactive and people can. So I think that those things, they speak volumes to me about heading in the right direction in terms of putting that face forward to the community and making sure the students have a lot of say. Sure.
Your vision of a 21st century community that engages in evidence-based impact.
I'm thinking about all that so that I get all of it in the answer. So I think that one thing that's important for us, that was important for us, we looked at our science classrooms, and I'll just use this as an example. And for us, our science classrooms weren't where we would want them to be to facilitate what you're talking about. We didn't have the state of the art. It wasn't there. And in fact, a lot of people would come in and assess our space, and one could say that a few years ago, some of the high schools had as strong of, if not stronger, science spaces. And I speak to that because you're saying evidence-based. So for us, that was very, very important that we fix that. And it was something, but we operate with very similar constraints to every other community college in the world. You know, it goes without saying, we have the same financial constraints. We have a board that loves some ideas, that's not as open, you know, that we're working with and we're collaborating with as well. And so you're trying to work within your means to do those things which you know must be done. But if you hit a point where you look at, say, just for example, a space, and it is no longer facilitating what you described, evidence-based, 21st century, where we are right now, then I think you need to be actively trying to figure out how you're going to correct that, and working your best and collaborating with all those folks that you have to collaborate with to get something done. And so for us, it was a new science building, you know, a new space, and that was a possibility for us at that time. And it was something that our board agreed and our community agreed it was time for. So we created that picture for them, that it was time for that space and that it's what our students in our county deserve. I think that's an important point. You're going to find those things where you're not quite where you want to be. And I think you have to start crafting and creating that narrative and telling that story, and telling it in a non-combative way, but telling it so that eventually you're working towards fixing those problems and moving towards them. So I think that's what's important to me. But I mean, when we talk about evidence-based 21st century, I mean, I certainly hope that we have a curriculum that's supporting exactly that which you described. So that from their time of coming on campus, they're going into comp, they're learning how to do proper, you know what I mean? And so that the entire curriculum is working towards getting them to that place where they can gather evidence, they can cite evidence, they can look at data, they know how to read it, and that they're having that experience. And I think that's certainly one that you want to be mindful of. Okay.
Good morning. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy of shared governance?
Okay.
Dr. Fisher, the people online have asked if you can restate the questions because they can hear you a
Oh.
little bit better. So somebody just wrote that one in.
Excellent. Thank you. So my definition of shared governance, right? Is that close? Philosophy of shared governance. So we have been on a journey at our college for shared governance for a number of years now. I see that this college is on a similar journey, it looks like. I've been, you know, kind of reading and what I've seen online and what I saw from some of the HLC feedback and stuff is that you all are on pretty much the same, looks like, trajectory or a similar trajectory that we've been on in terms of shared governance. For me, when it comes down to base philosophy, I've worked in top-down environments where every decision was made for me at the top and passed down to me. And now I've worked in more open, shared, kind of transparent environments. In terms of how much you are able to accomplish in an institution, I fundamentally believe that you're able to do a little bit more and maybe even a little bit faster with the appropriate voices in the room, with the appropriate level of buy-in. And I don't think that you get the essential buy-in that you need without some form of shared governance. And so in a question of efficiency, in a question of getting initiatives done that you want to get done, I think that shared governance is very, very important. Back at MCC, I was one of the first administrative reps on our faculty council, which was basically a contract-created council to start and overall represent the process of shared governance between the faculty and the university. But it also has staff and, of course, administrative representation on it as well. So I believe in shared governance. I think it's absolutely essential. And like I said, in my experience with the SIM planning, at the end of the day, the more buy-in that we were able to generate, the more we were able to get done. And when you look at all those initiatives that we were able to accomplish in a relatively quick time, that's because we had a lot of people in the room believing in it.
Dr. Fisher, we have another question from online. How do you plan on splitting your time up between all three of our campuses?
Okay, that's a great question. How do you plan on splitting time up between all three campuses? And so at MCC, we are basically a core campus. We are, by and large, a single campus. We have a few different opportunities. We have Harvard up in the north, which is very small. We offer classes in their high school. So it's kind of a campus up there, but not exactly. But we do have some coursework. And we have some coursework with a few of our community manufacturers to the north. And so that has created kind of a satellite campus. But at the end of the day, we are mainly a single campus. And so I'm always really like to be honest where you know, I haven't had a ton of experiences yet. But I think that at the end of the day, this comes down to just kind of really basic organization and planning your time well. I think that I would obviously get here. I would listen to some of the voices and see where there was a need, to see where those needs were. If definitely one of the campus needed to see my face, then I would go out there. But if that need was there and very, very present, then I would always be there. Other than that, I would basically try to manage my time well. I would look at my calendar and see what was an appropriate amount of time for me to allot to each area. So if there was an increased need, I would respond to that. But by and large, I would try to create a cycle where I was there fairly regularly, I think, just to address any problems or concerns. Definitely, I would always be available. At any point in the day via email. One thing you will know about me very quickly is that I respond absolutely immediately, obnoxiously so, to texts and emails and stuff like that. So I am quite a bit tied to my device here. I'm patting my pocket for a reason, because this is the longest I've gone without checking it in a few weeks. So, but at any rate, so I think that's my response to that. While I have not had that experience necessarily in a big way, I think a lot of that is just basic good time management skills. And I would always be available and always be there for them and go out there when there was an increased need to be there. All right?
Hi,
Hi.
Barbara Clark Evans with the Intercultural Center. So, in your professional career, if you had a do-over, could you tell us about a situation that you would do over and do differently?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question. So if I had a do-over, what would it be? I think early in my career, as a lot of younger administrators, I don't think I understood how important process was. Because you see process and you're kind of like, oh, this isn't fun. This isn't something I want to, it's not necessarily something that I want to stick to. I don't want to have to document all of these things. But you learn from experience a little bit later in your career that if you don't follow your processes appropriately, if you don't keep tabs on stuff, that it becomes a hindrance later. And it actually will prevent you from accomplishing some things that you'd like to accomplish too. And don't get me wrong, I'm going to do all of this in my own time, and you'll not even know I'm not some kind of stickler or whatever in that sense. But I have learned from early on that if you stick to your processes, it tends to be better for everybody involved. Unless, of course, you got a problem with your process, and then you got to figure that out and iron it out and work on it and come up with a better one. But by and large, I guess what I've learned from a few past experiences is to make sure you keep your documentation. You all as teachers know this too. Keep your documentations, keep your emails, save everything, follow the processes in your syllabus so that at the end of the semester, when the student comes up and says, I should have gotten an A, you can just be like, no, unfortunately, I have a large body of quantitative data which says you should not have gotten an A. And here's why, and let me explain it to you, to why you didn't. I learned kind of the same thing. I learned that in the classroom, but then I had to learn it administratively too, that like, okay, here's why this didn't work. And I could go back and kind of outline it and say, we had this email here. It wasn't appropriate or whatever, what have you, you know what I mean? And so that would be one thing that I learned, I think probably more the hard way, that I would go back to early years and be like, okay, I'm going to keep all of these records.
Right
Okay.
here. Hi.
Yes. Hi.
My name's Andrika, and I'm the Director of Student Activities here. And so can you explain or describe your personal mission statement?
So for me, and I thank you so much for asking that. So the question was, can you describe your personal mission statement? And so I did not go to a community college, but I always suspected that I would really like a community college, and I would really like that setting. So a few years ago, I started in earnest applying heavily. My sister went to a community college, and she's a lawyer now. My cousin went to a community college. She's a psychologist for the state now. And I mean, all of them I've seen in so many instances, community colleges work. I've seen them do it. And so I like the community college because it fills an inherent need in me to kind of know what I'm getting up for in the morning, to know what my purpose is. And any university does that, but it's just so clear in the community college because there are a lot of times where our students are a little bit more on the fringes. They need a little bit more attention. They need a little bit, and so that's a type of mission that I like. To be able, I mean, so I guess I would say that I'm mission driven in terms of that personal philosophy. I really, really like to have something that I can ascribe to and that I can stick to. And so for me, I'm very passionate about taking that adversity, taking maybe a bad start in life, a bad academic preparation in your high school or whatever, not the best focus, let's say, and turning that around. And turning that around for somebody and getting them in a place where they can move forward and support themselves or support their kids or support, you know what I mean? So taking very often that type of an experience that hasn't necessarily set somebody up for success and getting them on a path so that they can be where they want to be in life. So that's what gets me up in the morning and what gets me excited.
We have a question there, Dr.
One of the things that I really like as an older student is the online courses that I've taken with Dr. O and Ms. Collins. And what is your stance on it? I mean, to me, the online course, the reason why I like it, one of the reasons is because I can fit it into my schedule. They give me 2 or 3 modules at a time, and I can usually chew through them pretty well and pretty fast. I get pretty good grades on the online courses, and I'm just wondering what your focus is on online courses. Are you going to increase them, decrease them, keep them the same?
Okay, great question. And for our folks at home, if you didn't hear it, that is kind of basically what's my philosophy of online courses. What would I do with them? Increase, decrease, keep the same. The spirit of the question, I think. My wife is an adult student, and she has her bachelor's, but she's getting additional coursework for some changes she'd like to make. And for her, online works like gangbusters. It's great. We've got 2 little kids. She can do it when they're asleep, or she can do it at a time of day. It just works. So I fully realize and accept and believe that there is a target audience for online. And it's adult students, but it's also some of our traditional students who can fit in an online class when they can't fit in another one. And so I believe that online education is really, really important. A lot of times you'll get voices, going to move over, I'm ringing. You'll get voices that are not too excited about online learning. I think that's unfortunate. I think our question should always be, how can we make it better? I really do. If you feel bad about online learning, if you're skeptical about it, if you feel like it doesn't offer the same experience at an in-seat class, well, how can we improve it? How can we make that better? We've got the technology now. We're really, really, really getting the technology in face where a lot of online education can be face-to-face. You can even return now to the face-to-face element. We're using Zoom, and I think that is just really, we got a lot of technology falling into place now to make the online class more interactive, more exciting than ever. And so if we're skeptical about it, what's the root of that skepticism, and how can we make it better? Now, do I think every class should be online? Of course not. Yeah, no, of course. I think there's always going to be, particularly for the community college student, a place for the in-seat class, because I think we're going to serve a lot of students who need that accountability that face-to-face provides. So I think we have to keep doing both. In summary there, I think we have to keep doing both. And if we're skeptical of one or the other, I think we have to keep asking ourselves, how can we do them better?
I think Dr. Mosier has a question as well.
Sure.
So in your higher education career, what is your greatest success? What was your best win?
Okay. Thank you. So the question was, in my higher education career, what's my best success? or my biggest win? And that is a great question. Certainly, right now, having spent 5 years at McHenry County College, starting at a place where we had really, I came in and we had some lower scores on PACE in terms of employee satisfaction. We weren't as connected with the community as I think we could have been. I think growing with this administration that came in and turning around those PACE scores, having the employee relationships really strong, getting a really, really super healthy system of shared governance where the faculty and staff are able to feel like their voices are being heard, and yet still moving forward, getting stuff done, you know, like, because I think what was predicted is that'll be gridlock. Nothing will ever happen if we take all the time to get all that. So that to me, and being on, 5 years into that and looking back on it and seeing how much we've been able to accomplish, not that we were in a horrible place to begin with, but just how much growth that the college has had. It's kind of a subtle answer because it's been something over time, but it's brought a lot of satisfaction. And of course, our enrollments being up when nobody else is just sweet. For lack of a better word, that has to feel really, really good. So yeah, those would be two points of success that I'm happy with.
I think we have time for one last question, which
All
is
right.
a combination of Andrika and online as well.
So this is on the lighter end of the question. So what is your opinion about participating in a dunk tank?
Okay, so you don't get to do the dunk tank at MCC unless you're like president level, basically, like it's a presidential one. No, I have. That was the exact wrong thing to say. No, I will always dunk tank for the president. So honestly, I've had a number of different roles in my life that included the dunk tanking. I wish there was a way to filter and purify that water because it is always especially disgusting. If you've never done a dunk tank, it is one of the nastier experiences of your life. That is not chlorinated water. But no, I have done many a dunk tank. Great question.
Well, thank you everybody for your attendance and your participation. And there will be another forum for faculty at 11 o'clock. Thank you, Dr. Fisher.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.